Greeting attendees and welcome. Thank you for attending today's webinar. If you could please type your name and where you're tuning in from today in the comments box, we would appreciate it. Welcome to IFMA's newest installment on the Operations and Maintenance Benchmark Report. This one in particular focuses on India. The final report will be available for purchase in the IFMA bookstore at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time today. Participants who participated in the study will receive a free link to download, to view a free copy of the report via web browser. Today's presenter is Dr. Jake Smithwick, Associate Professor, Graduate Program Director, Construction and Facilities Engineering at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Today's panelists are Arun Kumar, SL, Workplace Services Lead, Keith Monterio, Senior VP Corporate Services, Anil Dixit, Head, Workplace India, and Mahinder Singh, Director. If our panelists could introduce themselves briefly. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Arun Kumar. I work for ServiceNow India. I head the workplace services in India. Thank you everyone. Over to you, Keith.
Hi everybody, I'm Keith. I work for Reliance Group. I take care of corporate services. I work for the manufacturing sector right now. I was earlier in the Geo, which is the digital services, and take care of over 100 million square feet right now. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, this is Anil Dixit, and I work for WSP India, and I handle around 2 lakh square feet of area of the facilities, both facilities and administration for this company in India.
And last but not least, we have Mahinder. You want to introduce yourself briefly, Mahinder?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Mahinder Singh. I work with IFMA India, and I head India for IFMA for India and Southeast Asia.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you all for being here today, our panelists, and especially our audience members here. We're very excited about this report. It has been a long time coming, and we're very interested to present the latest results and highlights from the particular report. And so with that said here, we'll go ahead and jump into the report. We'll get our slides pulled up. There we go. Today's agenda will cover a variety of different things around the benchmarking process, various demographics of our respondents to the facilities that responded to the survey. We'll cover janitorial maintenance and utility costs. We'll discuss staffing needs. And at the end, we'll have a summary and a question and answer session. Now, one thing I want to encourage all of our attendees here today, that if you have a question, a comment, or just something you'd like to ask our panelists, you kind of see their backgrounds here, definitely jump into the chat box or add a comment, because we will see those and we'll definitely address those throughout the presentation here. Definitely feel free to engage with us today as we go through the presentation. So the first question we're going to think about is, why do we do benchmarking? Why Asia? And why India, which is part of the Asian region? Our goal here is to get good quality information that summarizes how facilities are currently run in throughout India. Because when we have this good data, this helps us as facility professionals prepare better business cases to advocate for what we need to do. The report has been compiled together from various experts throughout the region. Both the survey, the report itself, and various data has been thoroughly vetted and reviewed by subject matter experts throughout the region here. So this is actually the first report of its kind for this region. We're very excited about it. And again, we hope you get value out of the report. And we're especially thankful to JLL for sponsoring the overall report creation, and we acknowledge their support of that. A little bit about myself and my research team. Like was mentioned, I'm a professor at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. I work with other faculty throughout that you see listed here. And our goal is to work with facility professionals, contractors, suppliers, different groups throughout the supply chain to make sure that when they deliver these services, that it's the best we can to optimize these services. And so we do a lot of research in this area. We've been at it for a number of years, and it's a lot of fun. And again, we're excited to be here today to present this. So a brief history about how we got started here today in terms of benchmarking and really how we got to this point in time. There's a long history of practical reports that really kicked this whole thing off. In 2017, IFMA published their North America benchmarks report, which for years, probably for decades, has been kind of the standard go-to resource in terms of benchmark reports. And so that's where this really got started in earnest, is back in 2017. Well, from there, we published a number of other follow-on reports about qualitative practices, again, focused on North America, because that's the only data we had at the time. We did a global study on space planning, and it's interesting that this report, in my view, is probably the only report published in the entire world that looks at global space benchmarks right before the COVID pandemic hit. So if you're looking for a report that looks and sets a benchmark for how things used to be right before we made all these adjustments due to the pandemic, this report is probably the single best resource to get a lot of the details from. And then finally, last year we published a global salary and comprehensive compensation report, and that has led to actually some of the data we have here today that's going to be presented. So I show this here to illustrate that IFMA is extremely active in benchmarking and collecting data, and that you should have a pretty high level of confidence in the quality of data that's presented that reflects actual conditions on the job site. Okay, so how do we actually put together this report? Well, the first thing we did is we took, again, the North America report, just because that's all we had available. We started with that, and then we modified the survey, the collection instrument, to be specific to the Asian market in India, based on unique needs and considerations there. So we took those questions. We had a group of subject matter experts who piloted the survey. They reviewed it, provide comments. We sent the survey out to IFMA and non-IFMA members, and in total we had about 158 respondents to the survey. Now, again, I acknowledge that this is a limited sample size, but again, this is the very first time we've ever done this in this region. And so considering this is more of a pilot study and the level and quality of detailed data we got, I think is actually pretty impressive here. So we had 158 folks from India specifically that responded to the survey. When I present cost data, everything is presented in Indian rupees per square foot. I do provide the conversion factors in the report, so if you need to convert to dollars or another currency, you have the data available to be able to do that based on what's described in the report. So let's look at what the demographics look at in terms of the respondents to the survey. So this is people that responded specifically that from India, and what types of sectors we have here. We generally classify our respondents by three major industry sectors, that the buildings that these sectors serve. We have services sector, so banking, healthcare, IT, insurance, things like that. We have manufacturing, so the production of goods. That also includes construction and building. And then finally, institutional. These are, think of educational buildings, schools, city buildings, things like governmental buildings are also included in this factor here. We also describe the buildings, the respondents, by what types of buildings they have. About 28% of respondents have multiple buildings in one location. 12% have multiple buildings in a single location. 28% have a single building. So to get a feel for what the buildings look like in terms of our respondents, this is kind of the breakdown of what that entails. The typical facility age is provided in this chart here, so less than 5 years at 14%, 5 to 10 years at 28%, and so forth, and that goes all the way down to more than 50 years. So the overall average of facilities in this data set for India is 25 years, and the median, in other words, the midpoint of all the data we have, is about 11 years old for these facilities. Now, what's interesting is that if you compare this facility data compared to, let's say, like North American respondents, this is significantly younger buildings that are in our sample size. And I'm not exactly sure what's driving that. Perhaps there's new construction going on, or just a different demographic of folks we talk to. But in general, these buildings tend to be much younger, much newer than we have in the North American sample, for example. So it's kind of interesting. We asked the respondents to provide us some details about space management. So how do they manage space in their buildings? Is it space within a building? And within that space, do they lease it? Do they own it and occupy it? Or do they own it and lease it to others? And so this provides a breakdown of what we see here. We can see here that in the respondents, 69% of people, for example, that lease their space as a tenant are buildings that are in multiple locations. So multiple buildings, multiple locations. Think of your campus profile or portfolio of buildings is typically what that might entail here. Now, I do want to make a quick reminder here that if you have questions or comments, please type those in the chat box or the comments section. We will see those. We will certainly address those. So don't be afraid to ask your questions or make any comments or questions you may have with that. So with this data here, one other thing we look at is what are the space allocations per occupant? Now, when you look at data and benchmarking reports, one important thing to do, especially recently with the pandemic, is to understand the time frame in which this data was collected. So most of this data was collected at the end of 2020 and into 21. And so the pandemic was certainly a factor as we were considering this here. So what this shows here is the percentiles. So if you imagine your whole sample, the upper percentile is those that have the highest number of feet allocated per occupant. This is the low side, and then the mean or the average is 142 square feet per occupant for interior area space. And then we have 120 square feet per plannable area for occupants as well. These are defined in the report. You can see what those are included, but this is the breakdown. Interestingly enough is that the average allocation per occupant is about 80% less than North American facilities. So people tend to be, there's much denser in buildings in India based on our sample here that is of interest. We do break this data down too by industry sector. So you can get these space allocations per occupant by like healthcare, IT, software, office buildings, manufacturing. The report does provide some details with that. So kind of the next thing I'd like to do is briefly have a discussion with our panelists here to kind of talk about this. This is definitely a hot topic nowadays. And the question I have on the floor here is, what strategies are actually effective in managing space allocations? And I'd like to actually call on Arun first, if you wanted to offer some perspective insights about how do we manage space effectively as a facility manager. Arun, what are your thoughts?
Sure. Thank you, Jake. This is a great question, and this is what is the most burning question at this point in time in the industry post-pandemic. And most of the workplace services managers and the facilities managers are looking forward for an appropriate process to take this forward. So I will talk into two pieces. One, I'll say why we have to do a strategy of the space management and how. So these are two different parts. So why we all of us know that to improve the efficiency, reduce the vacant space, improve the staff productivity and the satisfaction, drive innovation within the workplace services. So these are the key drivers why we have to do the strategy of our space management. Now, how you have to do it is, I mean, with my experience, first of all, we have to strategize the space management focusing on three P's. That is people, places, and process. Therefore, the space management strategies outlines the processes and standards that we can use today in our offices, right? And how you're going to do this is create a work group, create a small work group or a mid-sized work group, get the data, get the analysis of historical data of how the spaces are utilized and who is utilizing, what kind of businesses you have, what are the business drivers and things like that. Then unify the space management standards and process. Probably you need to go back and re-engineering the entire space allocation process that we have implemented in the companies. Then also redefine the business hierarchies, who has to get what space, how much space, and then do they have adequate space or excess space. So we have to do some kind of a a business hierarchy model within the organization. Then probably if permits, if at all, if the company permits, then we have to think about the recharging mechanism of the cost that to the each business unit for the space that they've occupied. So what happens is, end of the day, this brings a bit of a conscious to the business unit as well. Do they have extra space? Are they not utilizing the effective spaces and things like that? So recharge is basically, it's mostly bringing in the discipline. It's not that the workplace services is going to become a cost center sort of it, but it brings a lot of kind of a discipline within the organization with the business when they're using the space and standards, etc. And probably re-engineering of space standards also is very, very important. Why I'm saying this is define how to use our spaces individually, And with the team, with the group, hoteling, space sharing, a lot of occupancy standards have to be redefined. Then put some business rules to it, actually. Right? Who is going to come on which day? How many days the people need to come in? Who are critical people in the company? Which of the critical businesses that need to be in office? So these are some of the business rules. Some of these things are very, very important for us for us in the space management strategy, and this is definitely is going to help and improve the effective space utilization.
Fantastic. Thank you, Arun. Keith, you had shared some thoughts with me earlier too about your approach to your space management allocation system. Could you share some thoughts as well from your
Sure.
perspective?
Sure, Nick. Sure, Jake. We have a platform which is called a space allocation management system, wherein each business has his own team members specified in the space he or she has to occupy, and depending on, like Arun said, the frequency at which the colleague needs to work in the office or work from home, we found it very effective that people working from home had less time to travel and therefore spend more time at working. A very win-win situation, because you spend less as far as the utilities cost, power and water all reduced, huge cost savings in that front. But with the space allocation management system, you knew exactly how many people were required to work at what space and which area. So you could consolidate the people. We had around 26,000 people in the office. We brought them into just 11,000 people working at a time. So you reduce the amount of space that was actually used. And secondly, what was we were able to do is, we also have Scrum, wherein all service providers were also mapped in the system. So you knew at any point of time how many people were there and how many people were required. And you're able to optimize the output as far as the business is concerned. At the same time, you're able to get people together who are required to be together. The software guys would come to work only one day in a week, and that was sufficient for them. Whereas the retail guys who have a retail daily output were required to be there in the office every day. The other guys in other businesses would come every alternate day. So you managed to get an understanding of what was actually required for the business, not for the space that they occupy. So your output was not mapped with the amount of space you occupied, but the amount of business that you generated.
I
So
see.
we found that very practical.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you, Keith. Arun, did you have a follow-up comment as well?
Yeah, also adding to Keith's comment, that's a great comment, Keith. So post pandemic, Jake, everybody, most of the companies are in the decision process of hybrid model, or required to be in the office, or remote working. These are the three predominant decisions that the companies have made, irrespective of the organization, irrespective of the size of the organization and the nature of the business. So the technology is absolutely playing a big role here in terms of neighborhood allocation, the work point allocation, availability of the seat, employees before leaving to the office, booking in a desk through the application, and then coming back to office, so that it doesn't really cost the inconvenience to employees, or it's a user experience, most importantly, that we call in the new age of facility management. So I echo Keith comments that innovation plus the kind of a reprocess engineering about the space management strategy is so important from the spatial allocation point of view.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Back to you, Jake.
Really, thank you so much for your comments here, because these are, I think the main idea that we're taking away from this as well is that the importance of the facility manager and provide that strategic direction to assign space, manage that space, is extremely beneficial. And I don't think we can minimize the role of facility professionals in doing that. So that's really the first part of this report here. Looks at the buildings, the sample that we have, and the people that use the space is described within the report, right? So if you have an interest in that, or you have a need with that, the report, the beginning part of the report summarizes those different things. The next part of the report focuses on sustainable operations and maintenance. This includes green cleaning, sustainability, different practices around that. And so we're going to focus on that for a few minutes to talk about what the report found from that perspective. So one of the things we asked respondents about is the use of green certification in their buildings. And it's a pretty broad definition. So this can include LEED, or it can include different globes or other green standards, if you will, out there. And so we asked respondents, in your buildings, what have you done to become more green? So the report breaks this down by industry sector. So we look at the percentage of respondents that have no green elements in their buildings. In other words, there's nothing that is on the green side of things. They have plans for certification. They're not currently green certified, but they're working on it. They have some green elements, but no certification. And lastly, the percent of respondents that have one or more buildings in their portfolio actually that are green certified. Now, the question you might be asking yourself is, well, this is interesting, but how do I actually use this as a facility manager? The way you can use this, and the report provides some cost detail about this too, is that if you're trying to make the business case that we need to be doing this, you can look at what your peers have done. And let's say, for example, that 80% of your peers, given the industry sector that you work in, have green certification, but your facility doesn't. This might be a way to advocate, say, you know what, everybody else is doing this. We need to think about doing this for these reasons here. And that's really how we use benchmarking data, is to help us make stronger business cases when we advocate for additional funding or different ways to manage our facilities. This section report also highlights various recycling programs. So what percentage of respondents recycle paper versus batteries, computer parts, and so forth. It provides a breakdown of how many people actually provide these recycling programs. We also have some details too about janitorial or custodial work in terms of what practices they use. Are there different procedures? Are there green cleaning, other green practices? Again, this is summarized from a janitorial and maintenance, a janitorial perspective as well. So sustainability is a part of the report too. The bulk of the report now is getting to the maintenance cost, utility costs, and janitorial costs. So I'm going to highlight some of the cost metrics that we've seen in the report and discuss this for a moment here. So in this report, this is the actual raw data here. On the left-hand side is the India data for 2021. So these are janitorial costs per rupees per square foot. And then on the right-hand side, just for comparison purposes, I do apologize. I realize I should have actually converted these to rupees here, but these are dollars, US dollars per square foot. And so if you're able to do the calculation back of the napkin, you can kind of see and contrast the comparisons here. So we do provide details, cost on rupees per square foot. We also have these data presented by industry, by operating schedule, like is a building operating for 15 hours a day, 5 days a week. It breaks it down by different portfolios. The location of the building, we have detail by state, India state, that provides details, and there's other couple of demographics as well. We also have it broken down by facility use. So if this is an office building, if this is headquarters, education, we do provide the cost per square foot based on different types of facilities as well. The janitorial cost is also broken down, as I mentioned, the green certification. So if you have a certified building, the cost per square foot to clean that building if you have a green certification. So we provide some detail based on that. These costs here are also broken down by other factors as well. So if you use in-house janitorial services versus contracting those out, we have a cost breakdown that shows and contrasts those differences. The number of operating days per week, so if it's a 7 days a week facility, we have a different cost structure. Primary cleaning hours, are these done before the workday begins or after the workday ends, or do they typically clean during the workday? There's different costs based on how the building is cleaned. And also we break it down by the use of recycling programs. That makes sense, and that's useful because if you have a robust recycling program that requires lots of sorting and collecting of materials, that obviously is going to have a higher cost impact to be able to do that. And so we provide some benchmarks and breakdown on that as well. In terms of maintenance cost, we now switch over to this side of things. The costs are again presented in terms of what's called rentable square feet. This is essentially the actual space inside the building minus open spaces, or like janitorial closets, maintenance closets that are not used for occupants. That's how these are calculated. The costs presented are the external building cost, the interior cost. We also have cost data for roads and grounds, utility central systems, process treatment, and then the overall total maintenance cost as well. And you can see here we have the mean cost. So for example, we have just over 1,600 rupees per square foot based on a sample size of 49. Again, not a huge sample here, but it's something, right? This is the very first benchmark we have that provides detail on this type of information. The other thing we have here in this benchmark report is we look at staffing, or excuse me, software data and how professionals track their maintenance programs, right? So we asked respondents, how do you manage your maintenance programs? Do you use BIM? Do you use CAFM systems, CMMS, IWMS? Do you have a manual, like sheet and paper, pen and paper type thing? Or do you use digital tracking like Excel or something else? So this is the actual data from India. This data here is provided from India, or excuse me, North America in 2017, just as a way for us to compare and contrast. It's interesting is that both in North America and in India, the use of CAFM or CMMS systems is really not that widespread. There's some folks that have it, but in general, it's not used by a lot of people. What I have found professionally is that a lot of FMs, just like a simple Excel file, they'll list out all their equipment and they track, when's the next thing due for maintenance. The advantage of that, I think, is that it's simplistic, right? Everybody can generally use Excel or some other spreadsheet application. But the downside is that there's no enterprise perspective to that, meaning that you can't connect to different systems in your company, that if you have a lot of detailed equipment, it can be very challenging to manage that. And so we're seeing limited adoption, but I think into the future, these are things that we might want to think about. So with that in mind here, I kind of have another question is, maintenance tracking, again, has had a limited adoption, like I mentioned. And, the question is why, why is this? What should facility professionals think about when they look at maintenance tracking softwares and some of the benefits with that? And so, Keith, I wonder if I could turn that over to you here and offer some perspectives about software. What have you all done, and what are the benefits that you've seen from using software to track your maintenance programs? Keith?
Sure. Basically, we use a software called eFacility, wherein every employee or the family member of the employee, if they're staying in our township complexes in the industry, are allowed to log in and make a complaint if there's an issue, make a suggestion if there's a request, or make a simple a point of view that they would like to put across. Say that they would like something different, and this facility is open to everyone, and each SPOC is supposed, or the AIC as we call them, the engineer in charge, is supposed to reply within a specific time period. So maybe 15 minutes for a housekeeping issue, or 2 hours for a civil issue, or maybe a day for a mechanical issue, and in which case it's known to the complainant as well as the occupant or the manager what is the solution that is being provided and by when. So this kind of software helps us across, to know whether the solution is actually right or wrong. For example, if it's an issue that is, we split it up into what is called as VEDs, vital, essential, and desirable. Power is vital, essential maybe water and the canteen facilities, desirable maybe a gym facility or a spa, and then you track that in such a way that what is required to be done is done for the employee. The employee is not unsatisfied, but you don't have to go out of the way for something that is maybe a tennis court in a factory plant, which may not be the actual requirement, but if somebody requests for it, then we can actually see what we can do for it. Also, when we're talking about this maintenance, we also try to see that we are a green solution that is being provided rather than just a solution provided. If I have to provide transport within the plant or within the office area, is it an electric vehicle or is it a biofuel that we're using? And then you take this whole thing into account, and then the employee also knows that with this kind of a fuel and this kind of a solution, I may not be able to get the solution I'm actually looking for, but it provides a solution so that I'm able to maintain the organization's green view, what we are looking for. If you're a platinum LEED certified organization, then you would like to stick within the parameters of what we should be doing. So that's the solution that we look at, and we also keep it open for some people. We are the largest plastic manufacturer in the country, rather I could say in the world, and therefore I don't say that plastic is bad. I say the recycling or disposable of plastic is bad. If you can recycle or dispose the plastic in a favorable manner, it is good. So we collect also the plastic bottles and PET bottles, whatever it is, and we make material which is can be used either as jeans, or you can make polyester, or you can make fiber, which can be used for again plastic manufacturing or cloth. So how we go about it is very important. I hope
Absolutely.
that's okay, Jake.
Yes, thank you, Keith, so much. Arun, I know you work in enterprise platforms and you deal with maintenance tracking and different things related to that. Can you also offer us some perspectives about how we manage and track our maintenance more effectively as an FM? And Arun, I think you might be muted. If you want to unmute yourself here and offer some perspective, that'd be great.
Extremely sorry. Thank you, Jack. Again, that's an interesting question. So, interestingly, I had an opportunity to work in the past in an integrated facility management organization in the outsourcing companies, plus also leading the facilities for various companies in India as an FT in different organizations. So from my perspective and from my experience, we are absolutely in the midst of the journey at this point in time from an integration of technology plus technology for the maintenance operations perspective. So what are the strategic advantages that I have experienced that the maintenance tool that we have that could really bring in is, information technology. It's an application basically. It's not a manual process. It will actually avoid too many labors and too many people interacting with each other or the manual process and things like that. And it's also a reliable practice. It's a reliable theory, I can call. There will be a lot of reliability from a process point of view, from a standardization point of view, and from also the less errors. And there will be always a statistical analysis would be readily available for you if you really want to pull any kind of a data, any kind of a reports, or any kind of a the life shelf of the equipments, maintenance equipments, and things like that. It's pretty easy that the application could really help us to get the statistical analysis. And this also gives you a various approval flows, which we will call it as a decision analysis. It always gives you who needs to do what time, what kind of SLAs, and what kind of time frame the approvals need to be given, who needs to manage what. That's the general flow of the application theory. It also, in some cases, has a great benefit, cost benefit, optimization, great values of optimizing the cost, optimizing the manpower, increasing the efficiency, and things like that. Then also, it also gives you a perspective of what materials need to be used for the maintenances and when it is required, and what's the frequency. So a lot of these things could be part of the integration of this tool. That's the experience from the enterprise management software that we are using.
Fantastic. Thank you, Arun and Keith as well for your comments about that. That's really interesting because when we think about, again, our time as facility managers, right, is limited, right? We only have so many hours in the day. And if we have software and technology that can make our time faster, easier, more efficient, it certainly seems like there's value and maybe having more of an enterprise perspective on this. So again, I thank you both for your thoughts and comments on that. Another part of the report that is provided here is utility cost data. So we break down the report in terms of utility costs by different sectors, green certification. So again, the data for utilities is a bit limited relative to the other sections here, but we do have electricity cost, water cost, utilities cost. We do also provide energy use indexes or indices. So we have electrical kilowatt hours per square foot. We also had that in terms of BTUs per square foot, 1,000 BTUs. Compared to last year, 50% of respondents reported decreased consumption. And that's not really surprising because everybody was at home or not in the facilities. So therefore, that's why we see a decreased use in consumption. We found that outside of that, there's different ways that people have managed their utility or energy use more effectively, primarily by being intentional about how they manage that utility. Just by the fact that we're thinking about it, we're trying to make adjustments has found to be effective in terms of managing our energies more effectively. The final section of the report does close out with some details about the total cost of operations for the facility. So we sum together janitorial, maintenance, and utility cost, and we break that down by the facility use, the sector, operating schedule, age, location, and other factors as well. So this also provides a total overall perspective about how this is done. The last part I want to talk about here today is some workforce trends. What I've seen throughout the FM industry right now and a lot of other sectors is that finding people to be in the workforce is extremely difficult right now. There's lots of challenges both on the professional side of things, the technician side of things. It's been very difficult to find people to work in the workforce. So one thing that the report includes is some data about the typical allocations of the number of full-time equivalents we have for different types of facilities. So the size of the facility, this particular chart is for plumbers. So we have the size of the facility, we have the number of FTEs that are allocated. So like 0.06 FTEs, that's a half a person, meaning 20 hours a week approximately. They're in-house versus contracted out. So most of these plumbers for smaller facilities tend to be contracted out, which makes sense. The number of shifts per day, so two shifts per day, just over that, at just under 5 days a week. So the data here, our sample size, if you look at our sample size, this is limited, right? We're not going to sugarcoat this. This is a limited sample size. However, we do have pretty detailed data across a number of different portfolios here that give us insights into how many typical people are needed to meet these job functions here, right? And so we break this down by electricians, HVAC operators, carpenters, supervisors, managers, and other functions as well within the FM function. So if you have questions about staffing needs or different things, the report does provide some details about that. And kind of the last thing I just want to briefly ask our panelists here is, finding these people, as we all have experienced, has been a huge challenge, right? And so how can we find qualified people to work in these industries? And I know that Keith mentioned to me earlier today that one thing they've done is hired out of other sectors that have helped them address some of these concerns here. Keith, can you talk to us briefly about what you've done to address some of your own workforce challenges?
Sure. So what we have done is we've moved to the hotel industry, wherein guys coming out from graduating from the hotel management industry, and we've taken these guys on board. We've placed them in our sites, taking care of. They already come with a service aspect. The difference between an administrator and a service provider is that one looks at the administrative points and the other looks at the service angle. Now, to get somebody to take care of both these factors is what we were interested. So we decided to train them and get them an administrator who has a service mindset. So, you come out with a solution rather than with another question. And we hired guys from the Hotel Management Institute who were coming out. We took them on board as executive trainees. We placed them in the sites. We gave them a rotation within a year in 4 locations, either in the guest houses or in the cafeterias or in the plant manufacturing administration or in the general administration. And we found that we got guys who were actually ready to operate in any sector in the FM industry, and which was very good for us. And we realized that after we did that, a lot of other industries also decided to start doing the same thing. So these guys who actually would have gone to work in a hotel in shifts which were weird hours found it more practical to work in an industry where they could provide, and then they got to meet face to face different people on a different day, and it was quite a very interesting thing. We gave them uh, different milestones, and believe you me, it works wonders. So that's how we are going about it.
Yeah, Keith, I really like that, right? Hiring people with a service-minded background is a great idea, right? I mean, I had not really considered that before. That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Keith. That's
Thanks.
awesome. Yeah. Mahinder, I wonder if I could ask you for a minute, kind of as the IFMA leader for India. I know you have various chapter events and different opportunities. What's kind of the benefit, do you think, from people with participating in the IFMA chapter and to be involved or network with other facility professionals? Can you talk to us for a minute about what you've kind of seen and how that's a benefit to members?
Most of the chapters that we operate in India do chapter meetings on a month-on-month basis, sometimes on a bi-monthly basis. We take up subjects, we take up, concerning the FM sector and debate that and bring in subject matter experts to talk about various aspects of difficulties or including knowledge share activities that we feel is important for the FMs today. Notwithstanding the fact that there's a huge amount of churn and change that keeps happening in the FM sector time and again, and keeping the FMs updated about what is happening in their own cities is very, very important. And by virtue of having these monthly and bi-monthly chapter meetings, we keep the fraternity updated about the happenings around, and we cover various subjects. Just it's not about we handle human factors, we handle new technologies, we handle HR factors, we handle operation methodologies, anything that is new that is coming into the market, we keep them updated about it, and we discuss, debate, and try to understand from the industry experts on what exactly is happening in their cities. So that way we keep the engaged, the FM fraternity engaged, and at the same time try to update them on what is happening around. So we call in subject matter experts, we call in speakers from different industries, different sectors, and different facilities, so that they can share. This usually is covered, in a facility, where the FM is practicing, who is hosting it, and this also gives perspective to the people who participate to have a go around with the facility, if in case the facility host provides, an opportunity for people to have a look at their own facility and exhibit what exactly they have been practicing. So that way, there is an industry exposure, and also at the same time, the best practices are shared, and that is something what we've been doing across.
Sure. And it seems like it's inherently tied to benchmarking as well, right? If we're networking with people that are thinking about benchmarking and learning the latest trends here, it only makes sense that this benchmark report is another tool in the tool belt that can help them better understand how to manage their
Just to
facilities.
add that to Jake, see, the benchmarking report, what we have created now, needs to be widely spread, and people need to read that so that they can assimilate themselves with what exactly is happening around, and benchmark this with their own facility and other facilities around them. So when we provide them with an opportunity to meet people and meet and see facilities, they exchange ideas, they exchange notes, they exchange best practices, and that way they also get to go back and practice what they have not been doing. So that way, and that's the best way to learn and unlearn, as actually, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Arun, what are your thoughts?
Jack, I would break this question into two. One is a tactical and the other one is a strategic. Tactically, what we have been practicing from last few years is how do you how do you intensify your people? How do you motivate them? How do you make sure that there's a growth plan for all of them so that they are with the company for the longer period of time? That's the kind of a tactical thing. Strategically, most of these roles have been outsourced to either our outsourcing partners or the janitorial supplies or the technical manpower companies and things like that. So even then, what we do, we speak to these companies and we try and see what kind of the learning curvature or what kind of the learning offerings that they have within their companies as a growth plan for the junior staff who are deployed at the site level, and how frequently they would be getting an elevation, and what kind of different certification that they can undergo in the external market from a development point of view. So a lot of this conversation actually is helping me, and this has been a successful model. And also in this way, the junior staff gets a lot of opportunity for developing their career and seeking a new roles within the organization and continuing for a longer period of time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Arun. And actually, we're going to diverge here briefly. We had a question come in from our audience member that says, for somebody that's a fresh candidate, that's looking to get a job in facility management, how can we actually do that? Keith, I think you kind of alluded to that. If you were talking with somebody that wants to get into this industry, what advice would you offer them, or how might they get involved in facility management if this is kind of their first go around? Keith, what do you think?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we need to tell the person, what is the kind of role that is expected. In the FM industry, it is something that we need to comply with the situation, either getting a building which is LEED certified, ensuring that it operates at its maximum efficiency, and then, of course, getting the satisfaction, what is called as metaverse today in the new terminology, is the experience of the person in the prop in the premises. At the same time, ensuring that we operate the premise at the maximum efficiency as far as cost is concerned. So we need to take care of both those situations. Now that the new parameter that has come into our lives is ensuring that it's a carbon neutral solution, wherein we also ensure the environment is safe and we look after. For example, we have a very good certification called the FMP, which is really doing very well in the country, in India. And guys who do the certification understand within 6 months what is expected of them and how they need to operate in a facility management situation. So I think that's the correct path that we can take. And of course, we are
Absolutely.
always there as professionals. We spend a lot of our time trying to nurture this industry, which we all profess to have by default, and we are there to help out people. So IFMA does a lot of work in India, and we do chapter meetings, we do podcasts, we do uh, the facility fusion. So you get a chance to expose these guys to the industry.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thanks.
I like that. It's the value of getting educated. Like the FMP program is extremely beneficial. I think we had a comment posted too about the FMP program that IFMA offers. So be sure to take a look at that. Arun, what are your thoughts? How can somebody that's new to facility management actually get a job in this field? What do you think?
I totally resonate with the Piyush question. It's so important. Our industry, the facility management industry, has evolved in a real big way. We have become a business enablers now. We are actually no more order takers. We are actually the directors in the industry, right? You're absolutely right. And when somebody is looking for a opportunity as a facilities person in our domain, we just need to understand at what level that person is looking and how early he's looking. He can't be. It's a combination of multiple things actually. How early he's looking, what kind of credentials he has in the past, and how much. I mean, not necessarily that he must be highly technically qualified from a application point of view or a technology point of view or an innovation point of view, but definitely how good he is at people management, how good he is at managing the kind of his order of work for the day. So some of these things will actually give us an idea to take the people who are freshly wanted to join the FM industry.
Absolutely. Thank you. And our chat box is exploding here. Lots of questions are coming through now here. One of the questions has been, how long does it take us to do these types of certifications? Like, what's the duration for that? I know for me, I did my FMP a few years ago. It took about 4 months, 4 or 5 months to actually get that done. So I think the answer is it really depends on your schedule, your availability, and how much you want to get through and actually get that done, right? If you could sit down for many hours a day and get through the information and learn it, then you can get done pretty quickly. If you are busy with work, then obviously that'll take a bit longer here. But I think the main takeaway with this is the value of getting educated, whether that's a very short turnaround, for a simple certificate, or if it's a broader FMP or maybe the CFM. These add a lot of value to our organizations to be able to do that. It's also worth mentioning the SFP, if as a sustainable facility professional, that's currently being revised and updated. But that's another Credential that if you have questions about, we had another question come through about HVAC and energy savings. The SFP is a fantastic credential to learn, like, what does this mean and how to do that from a practical standpoint as well. Yeah, fantastic.
Very true, Jake. Very true. The SFP is one of the best credentials that you could have for doing anything on sustainability, whether it be wind energy or solar energy or water. It's one of the best certificates to go through.
Including
Fantastic.
sustainability and waste management, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is great here. The last thing I wanted to kind of close out with today is about the whole succession planning workforce thing is, what does that look like? What does the future look like in terms of workforce days? We've hit on significantly about the need to be educated, the need to bring in new people to a workforce. I really enjoyed Keith's comment about finding people with a service-minded perspective when they come to facility management, and that certainly adds a lot of value too. So I have some data here that shows, what does a workforce currently look like from that standpoint of what does the future look like. We asked respondents, there's a couple of different things that we look at. And 10 years ago, we did a research study that asked facility managers how many years until they retire. And so if Ashley, if you could pop up this on the slides here, we looked at how many years until facility professionals plan on retiring. And 10 years ago, actually it was almost 12 years ago, half of the people we talked with said they were planning on retiring by 2020. Now, this study was a number of years ago, so things have changed here. But frankly, folks, if you see something like this, where half of your demographics, half of your workforce is planning on retiring in 10 years, and we're at that point in time, that's really concerning. Now, things have modified, things have changed. Just last year, we reran the survey, this study, and we asked respondents, okay, now how many years until you retire? And so it's gotten a little bit better. You see that the more than 15 years is at 50%. So things have, the timeline to retirement has increased here, but there's still, close to 35% of respondents are retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. So things have gotten better from a workforce management standpoint in FM, but there's still work to be done, right? The thing about, we've done some other research in this as well. How do we actually transition and bring in new people? Is that many times when we think about succession planning, let's say you have a senior executive in facility management who retires, we want to think about, well, who's going to take over after this person retires here, right? What I have found is that a lot of the time, the seasoned facility professional that has really dedicated their professional life to their career just doesn't want to get up and leave, right? Because they want to make sure that the people that come after them can also effectively manage the facility and provide value to the organization. Other respondents we talked with, these are all facility people. We asked them, do you have a succession plan in place here? 64% of the respondents said they had no succession plan in place, right? So this idea of how do we plan out into the future here is something that we need to think about and consider that. The last piece of research we did with this, we looked at, well, when people decide to actually do succession planning, what does that time scale look like? How long does it take to do a successful succession plan? We found that on average, this is focusing construction, but it's similar to FM, 9 years to actually transition from one leader to the next year. Because, and here's how this breaks down. 2 years of planning and finding somebody, 3 years of preparing the successor, and then 4 years of actually transitioning and mentoring. Now, this came from construction, which is a little bit different from a true facility management job. I understand that here, but the main takeaway here is that it takes a long time, right? This is not just 2 weeks notice and now you have a new executive. This takes a long time to get these things done. This is kind of interesting too. The biggest reason that led people to do succession planning is due to poor or unexpected health issues. In other words, by the time we're thinking about succession planning, it's often too late. It's a very difficult time to turn around, and so we haven't really thought about that here, right? So there's other data here too. Loss of leadership as a result of transitions, other challenges here. We asked facility respondents in the IFMA's global salary survey last year, what percentage of you are interested in succession planning, right? What percent? 90% of the facility managers we asked them said, yes, we want to see more about succession planning. We have a need for this. And so there's new research studies that are coming out here soon that are going to be looking at this topic. So be sure to keep your eyes open to this, but this is a big need and it's something we need to consider for the future. So in summary here, when thinking about the workforce side of things and the benchmarking data we have here, traditionally what we do is we find mid-level people and we promote them. Right, this works. This does fill the bubble to a certain degree, but we still lose that experiential knowledge. Is something that we need to think about. We still have losses in efficiency, and for those reasons, it can be a challenge because we need to think about that. So, in summary, here to wrap everything up, when you think about how do you benchmark, this is the very first report we have for this region. So these are my thoughts and recommendations as how do we move forward here. The first thing is start small. If you've never benchmarked before in your facility, that's okay. Track something that's really simple and easy. Whatever you can, start it today, just do what you can, that's okay. There's also this idea of good, better, best. Good is tracking something, anything. If you're having some data, just track it, that's good. To track this on measures that actually can allow you to make changes is better, right? So if it allows you to actually look at the data and then make a shift to do something a little bit differently, that's better. The best is to do this on an annual basis. To take that data on a regular basis and track all that is really effective here. And this helps us make better business cases and it help us become a data-driven function for our facilities here. So again, folks, I really appreciate your time today, your attendance, especially thankful for our panelists here, and I'll certainly open it up if there's any final comments or thoughts from our panelists here that you'd like to offer. Anybody have any thoughts or comments to close this out? Anil or Keith? Mahinder?
Yeah. If you speak about succession planning, I had a point to make. One of the most important things that's happening around in India, especially, is trying to bring in people who are qualified and with credential holders to success to plan the future of their own offices. That's something that's taking place actually, and all this while the industry was predominantly dependent on people from the industry on what can you do with what you know. That means acquired skill set versus learned skill set versus somebody who has a credential that he can boast of. So that brings in uniformity in succession planning. It also brings in credibility in what exactly he's going to do, and also implementation of what he has learned to what exactly he can implement on his site. So that is something that is the trend that is changing, and in the days to come, I feel the more and more people who do credentials with not just IFMA, any kind of credentials for the FM sector is going to help them improvise and also plan officers and companies to execute their own succession planning. That's the take that is going to happen. I'm
Sure.
seeing that already happening here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mahinder. Anil, can you offer some perspectives from your insights? What advice can you offer to our attendees here today? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. See, this kind of benchmarking should be now a kind of a recurring exercise. There have been a lot of evolution happening around after COVID. COVID is still there. We are trying to get back to normal as far as possible, but the dynamics have changed. This hybrid working has brought in a lot of other changes with respect to the space planning kind of workforce which is now on the rostering. So a lot of these factors have also come up in a big way where we need to plan it out for the future. So this is one perspective. So that's my take on from this. Like we can just put more kind of exercise like this benchmarking in the current change scenario, which will help the workforce get the hands-on information. How do we plan? Because the scenarios are changing on a on a frequent basis. So that's my intake.
Fantastic. Thank you. Arun, close us out. What do you think about succession planning as a facility manager? Can you offer some brief thoughts on that?
Thank you, Jack. It's a very important topic for the day. As Mahinder said, I truly echo. First and foremost, the credentials are very, very important. How well the individuals are getting different credentials, different learning, certifications, and things like that from the FM industry. Point number one. Point number two, how the individuals are within the organization. They are not just focusing within the country operations, understanding the global operations, collaborating with the global teams, bringing the best practices from the global teams, and collaborating more from the country to global. So that is very important. That's another key takeaway for the succession. And number three, stakeholder plays a major role. Understand your stakeholder very closely. Understand your business engagements very closely. Ensure that you have the right discipline and the focus in your deliverables. So these are three main things that I think that that I would really definitely see a opportunity for a succession plan.
Sure, absolutely. And Keith, maybe final words of wisdom from you. You've offered some fantastic insights today. What are your thoughts here? How can we move this benchmarking effort forward here?
Jake, what I'll tell you my experience, which I did last year itself. I've been doing a bit of research and realized that I came down to New York last year in November, December, and I came down to Hudson Yard to see the Edge building because it's one of the most.
It's huge.
It's huge, and it's one of the most sustainable buildings in the world. And really needed to know, because if I had to replicate, I wanted to replicate something which was already has a success ratio. And of course, my skill sets were not in the same fashion I thought I would need for the future. So I've been I've done some certification courses as well, so that I get myself abreast to what is the technology that is required for today. And I don't become a laggard into the system. I want to be one who be a pathfinder. So I show the way what can be done, and the industry changes, the system process should also change. And unless you are there in the front, have feet on the ground, is what I thought was my motto of life. And I realized it is lockdown that you could do it even virtually.
Yeah.
So my experience is that I don't have to be on the ground to achieve something, but I can learn and I can replicate. I'm not a person who is ashamed to replicate what somebody else's success is. If it is a success over there and I can do it, why not? So that's my future for it.
I really, really appreciate that. And yeah, check out Hudson Yards. It is amazing. And thank you so much, Keith, for that. So, folks, again, we sincerely appreciate your time today. If you want to learn more about the IFMA chapters throughout India, Mahinder is your person. Reach out to him. He'll get you connected. There's fantastic educational opportunities. And again, thank you for being here today. Please check out the benchmark report. And with that, stay safe, stay healthy, and until next time, take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys.